Welcome to Spirits Podcast, a boozy dive into mythology, legends, and folklore. Every week we pour a drink and learn about a new story from around the world. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Julia.
And this is episode 139, Myth Movie Night, The Mummy.
This was Amanda's first time watching The Mummy. I love that we keep
Iconic.
picking films that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
It's very important
I have hardly
to me.
seen any films. I hardly know what film is.
You're like a sweet, innocent babe when it comes to film.
It was entirely entertaining. I really enjoyed this film. However, if you don't like us talking about the resoundingly poor effects of colonialism on the world, maybe not the episode for you, not gonna lie.
Nope, there's a lot of that. It's a lot of us saying the opposite of Indiana Jones. So it doesn't belong in a museum. Please return it back to the place that it's supposed to be.
Listen, Spirits Podcast, show up for the ghosts, stay for the restorative justice. That's all I'm saying.
That's all we're here for.
Julia, do you know who would never patron a museum with stolen artifacts?
Would it be our new patrons?
Our new patrons, Jen, Cheyenne, Tristan, and Lynn Amanda.
I really liked that transition, by the way. It's very
Thank you
good.
so much. And our supporting producer level patrons are those who totally become members of their museum's membership program. Philip, Eeyore, Skyla, Mercedes, Samantha, Danica, Marissa, Sammy, Josie, Neil, Jessica, and Phil Fresh, as well as our legend level patrons whose names are inscribed on the staircase of the Met: Ayla, Cody, Mr. Folk, James, Jess, Sarah, Sandra, Audra, and Jack Marie.
You and I had the same idea for how to embody our legend level patrons, and I
No.
appreciate it.
Thanks. Speaking of which, we are ordering this week the plaque for our founders wall here in the Multitude office. So excited about it. If you join the MultiCrew at the Magnificence level, you too can get your name inscribed forever on the Multitudio wall.
Yes, and if you haven't signed up for MultiCrew, you probably haven't heard the first couple episodes of Head Heart Gut.
Head Heart Gut. Today, actually, you can hear Julia defend her baby Squirtle, the gayest Pokemon, on the first round of Head Heart Gut, which is all about debating the best Generation 1 Pokemon starter.
Yeah, you can hear Eric and Mike set me up for a trap and then deduct points because they set me up for a trap.
Listen, it's a very ferocious debate, lovingly, with some rules and no stakes. So, multitude.
Yeah, it's a Pokemon eat Pokemon world out there, and it's rough. But Head Heart Gut is hysterical and lovely.
And you can sign up for the MultiCrew now to get access to this member-exclusive show at multicrew.club.
MultiCrew.club. You are so good with the new websites. I love it so much.
I try. But speaking of which, you're so good with the drinks, Julia. Please remind us again what we were drinking, this delicious cocktail.
Well, we did a Blood and Sand. I mentioned it a little bit more in the episode, but it just seems really appropriate, just like it did for our Sekhmet episode. So I just wanted to dive right in there and get in the mood for everything. It does feature scotch, and this is one of the few scotch drinks I actually like.
Yeah.
So there we go.
It also has the effect of making me picture a lioness ripping men's throats out in the desert, which, it's a mood.
A bonus for any cocktail. Amanda, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What you been reading? What you been watching? Tell me about things.
Oh, Julia, I would love to tell you about the beautiful novel that I gobbled up, The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. This is continuing my rom-com trend. It feels like YA in the best possible way, in the same way that Red, White, and Royal Blue does, where it's lovely. It focuses on personalities. There's no boring, overly pretentious prose in there. Only the sex is a little bit sexier, and it's absolutely wonderful. And Guillory also does this Sarah Dessen thing where the books are all set in a shared universe with the paths of the characters intersecting, which we love. But each novel does stand on its own, and there are 2 more coming out in 2019 in this universe.
Ooh.
4 books in this universe. It went from 1 to 4 in the course of a year. Guillory knows we're fans. We need it. We need more books.
Damn, that is incredible. I love your rom-com summer reads list.
Thank you. It's totally wonderful. That's The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory.
I also want to take a quick hot second because this trailer for this movie just dropped, but The Lighthouse
Ooh.
by the same guy who did The Witch.
Yes.
And it's all in black and white, and it looks like it's a period nautical piece about 2 dudes in a lighthouse, and it's horror, and I'm so excited for it.
Oh, I got excited that it was an adaptation of Virginia Woolf's The Lighthouse, which is just a dismal book about aging,
I'm sorry, it's not that, but there were tentacles and probably a kraken in there, so it's up our alley.
Sounds great. Well, I'll be sure to check that out, Julia, but not before enjoying Spirits Podcast, episode 139, Myth Movie Night, The Mummy.
So, Amanda, I know this one is not a tight 90 for you, but this week we watched The Mummy.
We did, and my first note was, ooh, some 90s CGI, baby.
It's actually not bad CGI, all things considered.
It's not awful, but it is definitely like, oh, that's an animated, like maggoty mummy coming at me. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. There were definitely some moments where I was like, oops, it was the 90s. We were less aware than we are now, but it was fully entertaining, and Brendan Frasier... tall drink of water, man.
Yeah, this movie does go hard into we'll just cast some white people as Egyptians. It's fine, but...
Yeah, and like the looting and colonialism of like, quote unquote, like discovering things.
It's the 1920s too at this point. It was...
Oh, is it really? I had no concept of time.
Really? I'm so curious. First, let's talk about our cocktail that we're having today, though.
Yes.
So I chose the Blood and Sand for this episode.
What a classic. I love it so much.
It's so good. And it's also basically name dropped in the film.
Yeah,
so
I thought that.
There's a whole section, and I will quote it here, that comes from Brendan Frasier. As Rick O'Connell, he says, "My whole damn garrison believed in this so much that without orders, they marched halfway across Libya and into Egypt to find that city. And when we got there, all we found was sand and blood." So... Blood and Sands for the cocktails.
There you go. I think we drank this for our lioness.
Sekhmet.
So good, but it's delicious. I love it any time of year, especially good in summer. It's like a lighter take on a Manhattan, or something you think of as being more autumnal or wintry.
I definitely think of Manhattans as autumnal and wintry, so I'm glad you said it.
Oh yeah, no, but the juice component I think is just delicious. So yeah. Patrons of the $4 level or above on patreon.com/spiritspodcast can get that recipe delivered to you.
Ooh, I wonder if we could next time do this with like a lighter juice, like a watermelon juice or something like that, to kind of lighten it up and make it more summery.
Tangerine?
Ooh, blood orange. There we go. That's our answer.
That's the one.
Found it. We're very good.
Well, we'll have to make that during our refill.
There we go. So, Amanda, let's get into the nitty gritty of this, because there's a lot of playing with Egyptian mythology and history that is not accurate whatsoever. I will say this is one of Jake's favorite movies of all time.
I see it being so entertaining. As I was watching it, I was thinking about how much Jake would enjoy these scenes, and also how this would adapt itself to like a ride at Universal or something.
It is a ride at Universal.
Oh, good. Okay, yes, because I was like, there are so many moments where I could see it being made into like an animatronic moment in a ride. And listen, I enjoyed the movie, even though there were moments where I was like, oh, not quite sure. I had a really fun time, and it did not feel overly long, and there was some good content. So I can't wait to discuss.
Yeah, it's definitely an entertaining film, and it was definitely big 90s, early 2000s film. This franchise is how The Rock got into acting.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Yes, he was in a spin-off called The Scorpion King.
Ooh.
Which he played the Scorpion King.
Well, that might be a good transition, Jules, to my first question, which is, why is everyone covered in gold paint?
That's a great question. Let's start with the plot, and then we'll get there, I suppose.
Okay. Sure.
So we start the movie off with a flashback to Thebes, not the Greek city, the one in Egypt, which they call the City of the Living. And it's supposed to be 1290 BC. They show the Sphinx, which is definitely not located in Thebes. And they also show the pyramids of Giza, which are also not located in Thebes. So that's interesting.
Just fast and loose, Jules. Fast and loose.
Just starting off real good.
Take a lot of Coke. Be a man in your mid-30s in LA in 1996 and just get into the headspace.
So we're introduced to the high priest Imhotep, who they call the Keeper of the Dead. He is having a love affair with Aksunamen, who supposedly no other man was allowed to touch her. She was the mistress of Pharaoh Seti I. Not accurate. Again, she wasn't. I think she ended up being the wife of King Tut, but definitely not King Seti I.
Oh, but she was like a historical figure.
She was a historical figure. I'm like 90% sure about that. Everyone here is named after a historical figure. They're just people who never would have historically met ever.
Gotcha. They like remixed it. And I get the point with the Sphinx too, because in Greek mythology, didn't the Sphinx guard Thebes? So maybe they were kind of like playing with it by putting it outside the Egyptian city of Thebes,
That's
even though it's
interesting.
geographically not right.
Yes, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. Appreciate you. As you pointed out, Anck-su-namun, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong the entire movie. Anck-su-namun is just covered in paint for some reason. Also, there's no nipples, so I'm glad that pasties were invented in 1290 BC.
Yeah. For her, though, I get the painting because she has a little bit of an embrace with Imhotep, the high priest. And then later, when the pharaoh spots her, he sees a little bit of a smudge in her arm paint. And listen, it's very hot. Maybe she sweated, but he takes that as like evidence that someone has touched his property.
Maybe she touched her own arms.
Maybe she did. Know. Maybe she itched. Maybe there was like a scarab beetle, because there are thousands of them apparently ready to eat your skin anytime.
Yep. By the way, Imhotep, from the sources I could find, translates to "he who comes in peace," which is an interesting thing to name your villain.
Maybe originally.
But he was seemingly named after a chancellor of the pharaoh Zoser, who was later deified as the high priest of Ra in Heliopolis.
Cool.
So the pharaoh, as you pointed out, discovers the affair. Imhotep and Anck-su-namun assassinate him, which is wild. Imhotep flees. Anck-su-namun commits suicide, intending for Imhotep to resurrect her, instead of her being taken by the Magi, which is the bodyguards of the pharaoh. So Imhotep and his priests steal her corpse, and they travel to Humanrapcha, the city of the dead, which is also not actually a thing and is the name of an Indian city, not an Egyptian one. The resurrection ritual is stopped by Seti's guards, the Magi, as I said before. Not the Magi, because I was thinking like the wise men who came to Jesus.
Sure.
It's a different thing. Spelled differently. So Imhotep's priests were all mummified alive, while Imhotep himself was sentenced to suffer the Homdai, which, according to the movie, is the worst of the Egyptian curses. So his tongue is cut out. He's buried alive with flesh-eating scarab beetles. So he's then...
It does kind of sound like the worst one, right?
Yes. So I will get to the accuracy of that in a second. But,
Okay.
So he is then sealed away in a sarcophagus at the feet of the god Anubis, who is the god of the mummification and partially the underworld, and is kept under strict surveillance by the Magi to prevent his return. So he's using, during the resurrection thing, the Black Book of the Dead, they called it, which I did a Google too. It's supposed to be made of pure obsidian, which is nonsense.
Yeah, that's... Ooh.
Also, the Book of the Dead it's a thing, but it wasn't actually like a book. It was a set of scrolls that had spells and passages as text that were designed to help the dead navigate the afterlife.
Yes, Julia, you know, like book binding invented definitely in
Much
the
later.
BCE era. Yeah. I love this idea that there could be like a single worst curse of like all of Egypt, which is like a civilization, you know, spanning thousands and thousands of years with like multiple eras and religions and epics and oh goodness.
So to answer the question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind about the Humdai and the living mummification. So mummification was a privilege. It wasn't like a thing that was done to everyone. So because it granted immortality in the afterlife, it granted you a life after death.
And I'm assuming extremely expensive. It took days and days and days.
Yeah, exactly. So you wouldn't do that to someone who was, you know, did a murder. You didn't do that to someone who has assassinated your pharaoh. So the Humdai is basically nonsense, other than the fact that being buried alive or decapitated were traditional ways of punishing someone who committed assassination like Imhotep. So they wouldn't have mummified them, they would have just buried them alive or cut their heads off.
Yeah, that makes much more sense to me.
Also in that scene, we see a bunch of people wearing Anubis heads. Like all of the people doing mummification are wearing Anubis heads, which wouldn't happen because you only had one person wear the head at the time because they were embodying the god, and clearly you can't have everyone doing that at the same time.
Makes sense.
So I'll also talk a little bit about the Magi here. Just I'm getting get this stuff out of the way now so that we don't have to talk about it later. So the Magi were a thing. They were a paramilitary police force for pharaohs since the New Kingdom. Interestingly, though, the Magi didn't exist after 1077, which is, you know, less than 200 years after this movie is supposed to take place, which is interesting to say the least. So there was no mention of them after that period. During the 18th dynasty, they were known to protect the royal palaces and tombs of Thebes, but they could be found all across the Egyptian kingdom. So that's a little interesting fun fact about the Magi. After all of this stuff goes down and Imhotep has been buried and whatnot, we flash forward to 1923, I believe.
That makes sense. Definite, like, hey, if we can just like go to any country and just take stuff, and that's called discovery.
God, it's the worst. And we open with the French Foreign Legion fighting some sort of native force. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here because, like,
I was not either.
Much research as I did, there was no armed conflict in this area at this time. There's nothing going on. The French Foreign Legion wouldn't have been fighting anyone. There's also no explanation why as to Brendan Frasier, aka Rick O'Connell, is fighting with the French Foreign Legion.
Yeah, no, none at all. And my general assumption was that it was kind of, like looting versus local, either protectors or local looters.
Yeah.
Like, and everyone just wants to get in on this, and they're fighting it out. And or like maybe French colonizers are here to like try to claim land or claim stuff, and folks in the area are like, no, thank you.
Yes, and they're fighting at the site of Humanrapcha, which is the city of the dead, according to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely forgot how high the body count in this film is. Just right off the bat.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I also forgot how big an asshole Benny was. I was like, you figure it out later, because he does some real gnarly things. But right off the bat, he is a dick.
Yeah.
So Brendan Frasier is leading these troops because the lieutenant or whatever ran away. He is not having a very good day. He is saved when he decides to take shelter right underneath the statue of Anubis where Imhotep is buried, and it scares off of the native people. The sand kind of turns into a sort of face with a gaping mouth, and Rick gets the hell out of there. And the Magi...
Julia, excuse me.
Yes.
Wind sand faces? No, thank you. Don't like it. Don't want it.
That's where you draw the line.
Bad.
Huh?
Extremely bad.
Starting off real strong. We saw people literally get mummified alive and get covered in scarabs before, but this is where Amanda draws the line.
Yeah, it's just, I do not like that idea of things that don't have faces suddenly rising up with unseen forces and getting faces.
Just hates the elementals. I gotcha.
While we're in this sidebar of my own creation, by the way, I would love, as I was watching this battle happening, I was like, I have no idea what the mechanics are of actually doing this battling. Like, do you just run at each other? Do you start on go? Like, every time I see a, Henry V style battle or a like Game of Thrones finale battle, which actually that one was interesting because you started with like arrows and then you did other stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but if anybody has good book recommendations on like the mechanics of pre-World War II war, I'm interested in it because I want to get a jump on my like retired dad who only reads war nonfiction phase.
Oh God! But the retired dads, they only read World War II because that's the real shit.
So I'm getting a jump on it, Julia. I got to go deeper.
Appreciate it. Good. That sounds really interesting and a good question that I don't really have the answer to, or is not relevant to the conversation for the rest of this movie.
No, not relevant at all.
We'll talk about
relevant.
it later.
Brendan Frasier, tall drink of water. Man, he looks great just diving around. Those like pot shot explosive effects are super cool, and the sand is really photogenic. Like it's very beautiful. And even though like if you can for a moment put aside like body count is high, concept is problematic, it is entertaining to watch for sure.
Also, this was the movie that he did right after doing George of the Jungle, and he was just like so hot then.
He was extremely hot, and I realized as I watched this that I'd never seen him just like right out of the shower. Like I've always seen him either very dusty or highly oiled, and that is a weird thought to have.
See him, he like gets out of prison later, and we see him like dolled up for the first time, and we're like, yes, acceptable.
Yeah, but no, he's wonderful, and his activism too in recent years around assault and like speaking out. It's just he's a wonderful human being, and I wish him happiness and satisfaction in life.
We stand Brendan Frasier on this podcast. Correct.
Absolutely.
So the Magi are watching Rick leave the city, and they decide that the creature remains undisturbed. So they're just going to let him go. And they're like, should we kill him before he leaves? And they're like, the desert will kill him. It's fine.
I mean, fair assumption, but also this happens again later on too. Like classic bad guy, you have to end it. Like they come back later and they say, "Okay, everybody, now clear out in the next day." And I'm like, "No, you chase them away.
They're not going to listen to you. They're white men. They're white adventurers. God.
Very true.
We then cut to our next scene where we meet the best character in the entire film, who is my entire heart and soul, Evie.
AKA, Julia, that's fucking Rachel Weisz.
I know. She's so
amazing.
hot. This movie is just like a bisexual nightmare for me because everyone is very attractive.
It super is. And like, she looks like such a baby gay. Like, wait until, honey, you see yourself in The Favorite. You're such a badass. You're a babe. You're going to go from those 90s penciled brows to like the full natural beauty.
Good.
Oh, she's so wonderful. And I do appreciate that she's just obviously a hot librarian. Like, they pan up from the feet and I'm like, well, obviously she's going to be hot. Like, that's the end of the shot. And there is a ton of like extremely funny talking to herself, like ladder humor. She is so charismatic. Like, she really, really is.
She's got good physical comedy too.
Very good physical comedy. And then as I texted you during my viewing of the film, I think it's a step too far to have the entire library cataloging system just destroyed in one fell swoop.
I was saying that there's no reason those shelves shouldn't be stabilized in some way.
Yeah.
And also set up in a domino effect. That just seems like poor planning.
It's very sad, but that does draw out her boss at the library/archive, who is not Jeff Goldblum.
No, he's not. He has some very good lines, though.
He does.
He goes, compared to you, the other plagues were a joy. And she's like, oh, it was an accident. He goes, when Ramses destroyed Syria, that was an accident. You're a catastrophe. I'm like, oh my God. That's such
extremely good. This is Eric Avery.
Yes.
He is just a wonderful
been in
actor.
Other stuff. What
known
else
from Mr. Deeds.
Yeah,
with
that's
Wikipedia
it.
tells me.
Yes. You would know him from Mr.
And
Deeds.
Stargate.
He's like, why do I keep you around? Evie's like, I do so many things. I can read all the languages. And I'm like, you tell him. Don't let that man tell you that you're not qualified. Go.
Yeah, no, she does great kind of advocacy for herself. And then when he sort of like dismisses her anyway, she storms off. And there's just like a shitload of mummies back there, man.
Yeah, because, it was a museum and that's what they did back then, I guess. So we meet her brother, Jonathan, who is taking a nap in one of the sarcophaguses with the mummy.
Yeah,
sarcophagi.
just destroying archaeological evidence.
Yeah. He gives her this cool thing that he found, quote unquote found. There's a lot of stealing in this movie, both culturally and physically stealing from other people.
John Hannah, by the way, the actor who plays her brother, is so famous and so Scottish, and it is extremely funny to see him play like a stereotypical Englishman.
Yes.
And a couple of times you can kind of hear the Scottish accent come out, and I love that I just had that context because he comes off as like a huge dick when we first meet him,
yes.
But I get kind of endeared to him over the course of the film.
Yeah, so we discovered that this box has a map in it, and it's a map that will lead them to Hymenoptera.
As I said, oh no, don't open the box. Oh no, it's a map. Oh no, that's worse.
Also, she opens this map that's supposed to be over 3,000 years old and just kind of snaps it open. I'm like, girl, please.
You would definitely have on your linen gloves and or cotton gloves. And like also it is so vibrant. And that's just like the Egyptians rolled paper. They didn't fold it.
Yeah, no. I'm just like, oh no, that's nonsense. So she shows it to the curator who accidentally burns it, quote unquote, accidentally. We find out later he's one of the Magi, so he didn't want them going to the place.
Yeah, but even as just like a curator who is there and knows what's like good and bad for himself, that was an extremely good move. It was like the first smart decision of the whole film so far.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was very well planned. I appreciate it. So they decide they want to find out how to get to the city now that their map is partially destroyed. And so Jonathan reveals that he stole the box from Rick O'Connell, American adventurer, who had discovered the city 3 years earlier while with the French Foreign Legion. Jonathan's just a drunk mess 90% of this film, which is great. Genuinely just spirits vibes all around.
Yep.
So they go to a local prison where Rick is being held. And they're not very specific as to why he's being held in the prison. They said he was looking for a good time and he found it. I was like, oh no, don't know what that means. Don't like it.
Yep.
Don't like the implications. So Rick makes a deal with Evelyn that he will lead them there if they are able to get him released from prison. However, he is scheduled to be hung or hanged that day. I always forget which one is grammatically correct. So Evie convinces the warden of the prison that they'll give him 25% of the Hymenoptera treasure in exchange for Rick's life, which he agrees to, and he shows up the next day to, make sure that his investment goes through. So they decide they are boarding a boat, I guess either up or down the Nile. I'm not sure which direction they went in. We see that the boat is being approached by the Magi. Jonathan is up there hanging around with some American adventurers who are also heading to the hidden city as well, saying they have a guy that's been there before, and Rick looks suspicious. Evie reveals to Rick that she has been looking for the Book of Amun-Ra, which is, again, not a thing. It's made out of pure gold. That's not why she wants it. She's just a good librarian who really wants to discover books, and I appreciate her.
Mm-hmm.
The American guide is revealed to be Benny, the asshole from earlier, who Rick then tosses overboard. But he notices watermarks on the deck, meaning someone has come out of the water and come on board.
Yes, extremely scary. And of course, we have our obligatory shot of Rachel Weisz in lingerie as she is getting ready for bed. And then we turn around and, oh, nope, scary guy in a black robe.
Yeah, it's the Magi. They are in Evie's room. They're looking for the map and the key, which they don't realize that the puzzle box is a key yet. Rick shows up to save her. He causes chaos in the process because he basically lights the boat on fire. Jonathan tries to grab the key/box as the ship begins to burn down. There's a fantastic shot as they're fleeing where there's a big gunfight and stuff like that. And Rick is reloading his gun as bullets start to get closer and closer. And Evie at the last second pulls him out. He's just extremely calm. And then Evie pulls him out of the way and he looks at her like, what? I had it. And she's like, no, you would have died.
It was so good. And while I sort of want to resist the he kissed her unconsensually and she's gonna fall for him anyway. Okay, it's happening.
I skipped right over it, to be fair.
I mean, yes, but also extremely sexy as he unrolls his ammo roll. Not gonna lie.
They have very good chemistry. Genuinely,
they do.
As the movie progresses, they have very good chemistry. And in the sequel, they're married and have a child.
Aww.
And it is the most marriage goals movie I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wow, I think I will actually have to watch that. Yeah. I also really loved his line, I only gamble with my life, never my money. Respect, man. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. So they all wind up going overboard. Jonathan is in the possession of the key, which is good because they'll need that later.
Yeah, I didn't see them grab it, but I'm glad that they did because there were a couple sort of near misses as they had to leave it behind.
Yeah, I agree. They wind up on a different side of the river from Benny and his American adventurers. Benny has all of the horses because someone was smart and grabbed all the horses from below deck. Rick and their crew, however, are on the right side of the river, so they don't have to cross it again. They're where they needed to be.
Listen, this is an action movie that was definitely trying to go for the laughs plus the action, but yes. I enjoy that. There were some good moments of humor. It felt actually a lot to me reminiscent of the modern superhero movies that we are all enjoying,
I was just about to say.
There's good old-fashioned shoot 'em ups. There is genuine character development. There's a larger plot that we're going after, and then there are just nice laughter moments.
Yeah. So they end up in a nearby town. They buy some camels and they set off. The Magi are watching as they approach the city, but decide to do nothing. I don't know why. The two groups that are heading to Hammurabi meet up, and the city is revealed when the sun rises.
It's beautiful.
Which I was reading an interesting article that was pointing out. They're like, why would the city of the dead be revealed when the sun is rising in the east, when the Egyptians associate the West with the dead? I was like, good fucking point.
Good point, y'all.
So the two groups race to the city to settle a bet that was placed on the boat about who would get there first. Evie wins it for them because of course she does. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
In the city, they start excavating the site. Evie is able to light up one of the mummy preparation chambers by using sun-catching mirrors, which is very cool and historically accurate. I appreciate that.
Is it? I was going to ask. It is very cool and much better than the National Treasure, fire to the torch treasure reveal.
I mean, it's so classically, everyone used fire and torches, and they use it later on in the film. But I really like the idea of the Egyptians understood the power of the sun, so of course they're going to use the mirrors and, use that light as a way of, lighting up their world.
Well, I thought it was extremely neat.
Yeah. They reach the foot of the Anubis statue where Evie thinks that the Book of Amun-Ra is located based on her studies. The Americans also show up at the same time, and they kind of have this showdown where Evie is like, okay, I know that there's she's kind of sussed out there's a chamber underneath that, so they're gonna go dig elsewhere, she tells the crew, and so they go to a chamber underneath and decide to dig up instead of digging down like the other crew is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the warden sneaks off and steals a bunch of these scarab gems that are on a wall. The Americans attempt to open up a compartment beneath the statue, and the diggers that they have do it are burned with acid, salt acid, like a booby trap. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'm not extremely happy to know that that salt acid is a thing besides like the beginning of Samin Nosrat's wonderful cookbook and TV show. But I don't want to live in a world where that's actually a thing.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin your worldview.
Oh, that's okay, Julia. I visited my mom at her workplace this past weekend at the beach. She's a professional lifeguard. It's very neat. And there's an adorable little frog sitting next to me in my chair. I looked down, the little froggy guy there in the shade with me. I was like,
I saw those
adorable
pictures.
Frog. Yes, like do your thing, babe. And then later, one of her colleagues jumped up and I was like, oh, a frog? And he was like, no, sand spider. And I was like, oh,
Don't like that. Don't like that.
How did I grow up for 27 years on an island and not know that sand spiders were a thing?
Nope. I don't want to think about it anymore. Thank you for that.
All right, move it on. Think of Brendan Fraser's pecs. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
thank God. So Rick and his crew accidentally managed to get to Imhotep's sarcophagus. It just kind of falls out of the ceiling while they're talking. Mm-hmm. The warden, while he's looting elsewhere, drops the scarab gem in the sand, and it turns into an actual scarab beetle that then digs into his skin and kills him. Mm-hmm. They read on the sarcophagus that the name of the person buried in there is He That Shall Not Be Named, because it's Voldemort, apparently. Evie realizes that their puzzle box is actually the key and is about to use it to open up the lock, but is distracted by the dying screams of the warden. Because,
Yeah,
of course.
Also, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we going to open a sarcophagus that obviously looks cursed? Why are we going to use this key that was deliberately stored somewhere else to do this? Like, it's also an awful lot of ceremony for a guy that killed a pharaoh. Like, surely lots of people killed lots of pharaohs over the years. And like you were saying earlier, it doesn't make sense to me to like venerate and immortalize him in this way.
I agree. 100%. Also, they're doing all this because they're dumb white people.
Yeah, I guess.
You
But
know that we
come on.
love moving into haunted houses.
That's true.
Subjecting all of our families to getting possessed. That kind of thing.
Fair.
Typical. That later that night, they wonder about how he died. They find some great Glenlivet in his bag, and they start drinking it, and then the Magi attack. Because why not?
Yep.
The Magi warn them, leave this place or die, and now they have one day to leave. Again, pointing out the flaw that the Magi have, where they should actually be doing things
Yes, they should.
rather than just letting white men take reign for another day. Anyway.
I mean, maybe they're being merciful and kind of restrained if they have truly been around for 3,000 years, like maintaining that descendantship and the stewardship of this area.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, they're not just like, you know, slashing and burning anytime someone comes close to them.
Right.
But at the same time, like these folks clearly don't know what is good for them. And yeah, they definitely should have just chased them out or escorted them away.
Yeah, that would have been the smart thing to do, but then we would have no plot. So Evie gets drunk on that Glenlivet and tells the story about her history, how her parents were explorers, her mother was Egyptian, her father was English, and she has this great line. She goes, "But I'm proud of what I am." And Brendan Frasier goes, "And what is that?" She goes, "I am a librarian."
I would say that every day if I had the God-given honor to be a librarian.
Oh, it's so true. Oh,
Oh,
gosh.
so wonderful. I
love
also
her so much.
definitely have a headcanon that John Hannah insisted they use Glenlivet, which is a wonderful Scottish whiskey.
That's probably correct. That's why he's drinking it straight from the bottle. It's fantastic. So the next day, the Americans open up the statue of Anubis. They find a box with a curse on it. I wrote down the whole curse. Are we ready for this?
I think I might have to first get a refill. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Let's go get a refill, and then I'll tell you about a curse. Amanda, you know how you love cooking at home, but sometimes there's just dishes that you want real bad and you can't recreate it in your own kitchen, so you got to order it out, right?
Absolutely. My pad thai game is strong, not as strong as ordering in.
That's true. Well, thankfully, you can order in with DoorDash. So DoorDash connects you with all your favorite restaurants in your city. Ordering is super easy. You just open up the DoorDash app, you choose what you want to eat, and then the Dasher brings it right to you. So wherever you are, your food's coming to you.
I'm also moving today, Julia, so I have
Yes.
been really hitting up that DoorDash because all my dishes are packed.
Absolutely. And it's easier that way too. I love the ease of DoorDash. So not only is that awesome pad thai place that you want available on DoorDash, but over 310,000 other amazing restaurants are too. So DoorDash connects you with door-to-door delivery in over 3,300 cities and all 50 states across the United States and Canada. So don't worry about dinner tonight, Amanda. Let dinner come to you with DoorDash. And right now, our listeners can get $5 off their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code SPIRITS.
Beautiful. That's DoorDash in the App Store and use the promo code SPIRITS at checkout for $5 off.
Yep. Again, promo code SPIRITS, $5 off your first order with DoorDash. Thank you, DoorDash. I want that pad thai now.
Well, we're going to have to pause for just a couple minutes more because our next sponsor is something I rely on all the time as a small business owner. It's HoneyBook. And if you run your own business, whether that's like a side gig you do a couple hours a week or a small business full-fledged that you run as your job, you are used to doing it all. But if you're struggling to get through your to-do list and like dreading those administrative tasks, HoneyBook can help. I certainly did not picture sitting at my laptop yelling at my accounting software as I try to reconcile all the invoices on the last day of the month, which today is. But HoneyBook is an online business management tool that helps. It helps you organize your client communications, your bookings, your contracts, your invoices, all in one place. And it makes it really simple to just run your business better. It looks super professional. It saves you time and makes you look even more legit than you already are with like e-signatures, automation, all those templates. It makes you look good and helps you keep on track.
Yeah, honestly, Amanda does such amazing work with all of your business stuff. I don't even know the correct terms for it, as you can tell. You. But HoneyBook has, I know, been helping you quite a bit with all of that.
It sure has. And right now, HoneyBook is offering our listeners half off, 50% off when you visit honeybook.com/spirits. That's also a flexible discount code. So whether you pay monthly or annually, get 50% off at honeybook.com/spirits.
Again, that is honeybook.com/spirits, and you get 50% off.
And Julia, we're finally sponsored this week by Skillshare. And I was on a call with a client the other day who was asking for some help in like thinking about their podcast, making sure they're on the right track for sustainability, going forward in the future. And I was really happy to refer them to the free resource of my Skillshare class, all about podcast marketing. And it very much is something that all of us in Multitude have contributed to in that like this really summarizes a lot of the lessons that we have come to really believe in and talk about over the course of our few years in podcasting, about stuff like how you have to treat your kind of peers, the people who run shows similar to yours, like colleagues and not competition. How on social media, the best way to grow the show and reach an audience is to be genuinely friendly, to contribute to your community instead of trying to take stuff away from it. It's stuff that we have discovered together over the last 4 years and stuff that I'm super happy to teach other folks about in the course of their podcast marketing.
Yeah, and Skillshare is great because not only is it offering Amanda's amazing class on podcast marketing, but it's an online learning community for creators, and they now have over 25,000 classes that will help fuel your curiosity, creativity, and your career.
Absolutely. And you can get access to every single class that Skillshare has to offer by joining Skillshare Premium. And you can get 2 months for free by going to Skillshare.com/spirits2.
Yep. Again, that is Skillshare.com/spirits2 for 2 free months of Skillshare, 2 free months of learning.
All right. Go ahead and learn something new. Thanks, Skillshare. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, we're back, Amanda.
I'm fortified.
We've made our blood and sands with blood orange juice this time. We ran down to the bodega and they had some. It's great.
It's delicious. A+.
So let me tell you about this curse that the Americans found, and they still opened the box like idiots.
Now, Julia, I will permit you to read this curse because you are not reading from a book of the dead outside the sarcophagus of a definitely cursed, like, primeval power.
Correct. And we're not going to open the box that is telling us about this curse. Okay.
Let's do it.
Death will come on swift wings to whomsoever opens this chest. Okay, whomsoever, really? In ancient Egyptian? God,
it's not, whatever. I mean, it could have been taking some kind of translation liberties, but yeah. Whomst indeed.
There is one, the undead, who, if brought back to life, is bound by sacred law to consummate this curse. He will kill all who open this chest and assimilate their organs and fluids, and in doing so he will regenerate and no longer be the undead, but a plague upon this earth.
Assimilate their organs and fluids.
The best part.
The best part. I mean, probably, like, why couldn't it be absorb? Are they just, they're
gonna assimilate it. It's theirs now.
It's extremely poetic and evocative. I think it's a great piece of writing, but it's just like it's squirmingly specific.
Yeah. Back So they open it up, obviously, and they find the book inside.
Yeah.
And also they're like Copic. I kept calling them vessels in my notes, but the things that you would put the organs in during mummification.
Exactly.
And they're like, ooh, treasure. And they're really happy with that.
Yeah, they're like the vessels.
So back at the sarcophagus of Imhotep, which we don't know is Imhotep yet, it's fine. Evie points out that the sacred spells have been chiseled off, which means, these are spells that would help a person into the afterlife kind of navigate what their next steps are. And this is actually a legit thing. So I've seen sarcophagi where instead of the open eye of Ra, which is allows the either the Ka, I think it's the Ka to leave. I've seen closed eyes of Ra, which are basically trap the person in the sarcophagus so they can't leave it.
Now, what is the logic here of putting so much time and expense into mummifying somebody if you don't want them to proceed to the afterlife?
I don't know. I don't get it. That's the point of the movie.
Also,
bad.
I'm pretty sure that you would have carved the sarcophagi to order, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? Because again, this is probably in reality not being done very often at all. So it would make sense that you kind of put it together to order, and either it's blank or has a big X on it, or I mean, for chiseling it off is a really interesting observation and something that would make sense that she would notice, even if they don't put together the sort of like disastrous consequences of it yet. But that was really neat and made me give little goosebumps because I was like, oh no.
I mean, at one point she says either this was someone really important or someone did something very naughty, and I was like, it's the later one, it. So they open up the sarcophagus and they comment on how the body is still, as the boys say, juicy.
It sure is, Julia. And Evie is always like, I hate it when these things do that. Like, really? Do you have like theatrically pressurized mummy reveals often?
I guess.
Oh, but Julia, please tell me how they made this juicy mummy. It looked horrifying and great, and I want to know if it was like practical effects or if you know anything about how this was done.
It was definitely practical effects because later on when we see Imhotep be regenerated and revitalized, he's much drier as CGI than he is as physical jelly zombie.
Yeah, but he looked so bad I almost couldn't look at him, and that's a great effect.
It was very good, yeah. So they find that inside the sarcophagus with his fingernails, Imhotep has carved the phrase, "Death is only the beginning." Fantastic.
He sure did.
Good.
And like the fingernail marks on the inside of the coffin are horrible still.
Meanwhile, as they're leaving for the evening, Evie sees that the scholar that is with the Americans has found the Black Book of the Dead. And so as he falls asleep, she steals it from him and opens it using the key. Because,
yeah,
of course she does.
Not a secure campsite whatsoever.
As she does so, she says the phrase, "No harm ever came from reading a book," which, Evie, please.
You know better, girl.
Evie, please. So she reads from the book. She awakens Imhotep, as well as summoning a whole plague of locusts.
Yep.
One of the Americans becomes Velma from Scooby-Doo because he can't see without his glasses as they fall off as they run from the locusts. He is cornered by Imhotep, who then takes the man's eyes and tongue. It's a good place to start. You need those. Evie falls through a trap door and discovers that the man is now missing his eyes and tongue. She faces down Imhotep, who thinks that she is his lost love. Ooh, that's not good. Rick shoots him, and then they run, and outside they're face to face with the Magi. So Benny is left behind, but manages to ally himself with Imhotep because they can both speak a common language, which is Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really interesting scene, too, where he's just going through different, prayers and chants to see which one will help him.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very much allies with the character description of just Benny as a whole.
I get it. That's the not Pascal's wager, but someone's wager, right? Like the sort of best logically attitude toward religion is to believe in the afterlife because exactly, yeah. Like if it works out, then great, and if not, you sort of haven't lost much. But I thought it was really interesting and kind of tactical as well.
Yeah. So to Benny, Imhotep reveals that he's looking for those vessels that the Americans took. He has one. He needs the other 4.
I will say those Americans dress extremely well, and I would definitely want to dress like all of them.
You know what? I said the same thing to myself. I was like, yeah, I'd wear all of those outfits, except the one guy who had like kind of like the weird like stunty tie.
That's true.
He's the last one to die of the Americans. I was like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. Without the tie, it's a very good look, though. So, meanwhile, Rick wants to get out while they can, while Evie feels responsible and insists that they have to do something, because she's a very good person and we love her.
She is.
Imhotep goes after Burns, which is the one he's already taken eyes and a tongue from. Meanwhile, while they're at a bar, all the liquid is turned to blood, which lets them know that Imhotep is nearby. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about how Imhotep brings the plagues from Exodus.
Yeah, he apparently brings like the 10 plagues down upon them. He has well, originally, of course, the rivers running red, but I guess fountains and water does as well.
Sure.
But it was a interesting.
Even their alcohol turned to blood.
Yeah, and it was an interesting nod, I guess, to 10 plagues and all that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about kind of mixing these classic Egyptian mythology and folklore themes with
like Passover.
Yeah. I don't know about it. I have weird feelings about it. But either way, it's happening. We're just going to deal with it and move on.
Here we go.
Imhotep is revealed to be more formed now because he has sucked the life energy out of Burns. He has like actual muscle mass and whatnot. Like no skin yet, but there's like kind of muscle there.
Yeah, it is kind of a cool progression as he gets more energy and becomes more like corporeal.
Yes, but Imhotep is scared away by the presence of Evie's cat. According to the movie, it's because they're guardians of the underworld, which they're not guardians of the underworld, but Bast was a goddess of protection and whatnot, so it makes sense, kinda. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and weren't cats like really present in religious and like cultural practice in ancient Egypt?
Yeah, Bast was an incredibly important goddess, and she was associated with cats.
Yeah, and like good stuff, like fertility and power, justice.
Yes. The good girl. Meanwhile, Imhotep collects another one of the jars. He kills the Egyptologist, the scholar that was with the Americans, and unleashes a swarm of flies that attack the crowd. Fun. Very exciting. Yep. The remaining 2 Americans hide out, but one is killed by Imhotep in the form of a sandstorm, which is a very cool death. Really liked that one. He then enters Evie's bedroom in the form of sand, like fucking Zeus. Don't appreciate it. And kisses her while she's sleeping. There's a lot of non-consensual kissing of Evie in this film, and I don't like it. Rick bursts in. He uses the cat again to scare him away. And they move on. So Imhotep has also created this army of brainwashed folks that are going after the survivors. And also he wants to capture Evie because he wants to use her as part of the sacrifice to bring back his loved one. Evie realizes that the scholars, the Egyptian scholars in England, have messed up where the location of the 2 books is. So they were able to find the Black Book of the Dead, but she's looking for the Book of Amun-Ra, and that one is in the statue of Horus instead. So nice, they're fleeing from this hotel or whatever that they're staying at. The last American is taken by Imhotep during the chase, so he's now kind of fully in. Looking good. He's looking good. He's in human form now. There's no holes in his body anymore. They are cornered by Imhotep. Evie corrects Benny's translations. Benny's ancient Egyptian.
It's so satisfying.
Which is very, very funny and very good, and I really appreciate it. Evie offers herself up to Imhotep so that the rest of the crew can escape and get the Book of Amun-Ra to kind of stop Imhotep. The curator is killed in the process of them escaping, which is sad. Don't like that.
No,
sorry, bud. Then they go to Winston, who is a former British air captain who is looking for fame and glory and is just plain bored. And they convince him very easily to take them to Hamunaptra.
Yeah, we met him in the bar in one of the previous nights, or I guess that same night? I don't recall.
Yeah, it was the night where all the blood...
Exactly.
All the drinks became blood.
Oh, yeah. So saw him earlier then when they were just drinking and trying to forget. And I was like, oh, well, this man's face has been lingered on for too long. Like, clearly he's going to be useful to the plot in some way. And indeed, he is able to fly them closer to the statue and then dies when we have another awful face wind contraption. Please stop. It's bad.
It probably would have killed all of them, but Evie breaks Imhotep's concentration for the cool magic spell that he's creating with the sandstorm kissing him.
Yes,
love
good
it.
job,
Use
girl.
those feminine wiles. I appreciate you. So the plane is ruined. All of the main characters survive except Winston, who is sucked into the ground by quicksand. along
Sorry,
with the plane.
bud.
Sorry, bud. Back in the city, one of the scarabs manages to get into Jonathan, but Rick is quick to cut it out of him, which is
Horrible. Hate
horrible,
it.
but also glad he's not dead. However, this alerts Imhotep to their presence, and he sends all of his living mummies after them, who the living mummies are basically like his priests that were also mummified alive with him, I think, supposedly.
Yes. All those gold painted friends.
Yes, all the
But
gold-painted
no.
friends who are no longer covered in gold. The crew, though, I'm just going to keep calling them the crew, the three remaining men, they just find the room with all the gold in it. You know, the treasure room or what have you. The room with the gold.
Again, not yours for the taking, guys. Keep walking.
Nope. And then the mummies start attacking them. So that's not great for them. I kind of zoned out a little bit because the action sequences don't hold my attention very often.
Yeah, it was extremely actiony. I'm fine to kind of hit on the high points here. There were some very good like Dementor CGI of like the cloak and kind of smoky like servants of Imhotep, and it was really very good.
Evie is meanwhile tied down to the sacrifice table. Her body is going to be used to bring back Anck-su-namun. The boys are managed to find the Book of Amun-Ra in the Horus statue. Imhotep starts his ritual. Jonathan interrupts it, distracting Imhotep with the fact that he has the Book of Amun-Ra. And meanwhile, Rick is dispatching mummies, is able to partially free Evie. At one point, there's mummies crawling on the wall like Spider-Man, and I was so confused. Jonathan attempts to read the Book of Amun-Ra, but they can't get it open, so he manages to steal the Black Book of the Dead instead and get control of the mummies, which is also very funny because he doesn't read Egyptian, so Evie is basically translating with him while she's doing battle with Anck-su-namun's mummy. It's very, very cool and very funny. Jonathan is able to get the mummies to attack Anck-su-namun's body, which basically they kill her, interrupting the process. And Rick goes after Imhotep after Evie opens the Book of Amun-Ra. So opening the Book of Amun-Ra, we see this ghostly chariot ride through and take Imhotep's soul. That's not how the Egyptian afterlife works, but they took his quote-unquote soul to the underworld, presumably. It makes Imhotep mortal, and he is stabbed by Rick. He falls into that weird, creepy soul water stuff and reverts back to his mummified form before slipping under, saying to them, "Death is only the beginning." Because, you know.
Indeed. Motif's got to come back.
That intense circle, have to circle back around to it. Meanwhile, Benny's been looting this whole time, which is typical Benny. He activates a trap, however, which starts to sink the entire temple into the ground. Sucks, not good. Jonathan loses the book because he trips and just drops it into the water, and Evie's like, "What did you do?" But the boys grab her and pull her away. Benny is trapped inside the temple with all of the gold that he ever wanted. Of course, the scarabs surround him and presumably kill him, and the city is destroyed big time as our heroes escape, and the movie ends with Rick and Evie kissing.
And Evie, unfortunately, because she has some kind of like fucked up like wedding night, the bridal dress in black, has to ride side saddle on that camel, which I was like watching her hold on to the saddle horn and just imagining how tightly Rachel Weisz was grabbing onto that, because it looks real. I think they were really riding that camel. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Rachel Weisz probably learned how to ride a camel, and I'm really proud of her.
You know, Juliet, sometimes you gotta ride the camel.
Sometimes you just gotta ride that camel, though.
That's my takeaway.
So, Amanda, what was your general opinion of The Mummy from 1999?
You know, I enjoyed it. I think it did not age well in some respects, but the action was entertaining. It kind of hit a lot of similar notes to Indiana Jones for me, in sort of like well thought out action, like interesting kind of varied methods of fighting. There was some humor, you know, there was a little bit of like romance and intrigue, and the mythology was kind of like just put together enough that I think someone who wasn't looking to interrogate it would find it pretty, you know, understandable and like coherent.
Oh, Jake, you mean Jake.
I mean, listen, Jake asks great and critical questions, but I think he's primarily there to enjoy things, whereas I'm primarily there to be like, what's wrong with this?
Yes, same. But yeah, despite its not great mythology accuracy, I think it's genuinely an enjoyable film, and I think it is a good place for people who are interested in Egyptian mythology to kind of, you know, wet their whistle a little and dig deeper if they want to know more, which is a good myth movie night film for us, in my opinion.
Oh, totally. I was just going to say I love that about the Myth Movie Nights, where we can primarily be here to like have fun, watch a movie, talk about it with the audience, but also it's an invitation and an opportunity. It's hard to just be like, let me learn all of Egyptian mythology.
Yeah.
But being able to say specifically like, okay, well, I wonder what the, kind of rules for who gets mummified and who doesn't, what those are. And then that's a way where you can kind of start diving in a way that's manageable.
Yeah, I agree. So check out more accurate Egyptian mythology besides the Mummy franchise. And remember, listeners, to stay creepy.
Stay cool. Thanks again to our sponsors. DoorDash will give you $5 off your first order when you enter code SPIRITS at checkout. HoneyBook is giving you 50% off your first year of HoneyBook at honeybook.com/spirits. And Skillshare gives you 2 free months of Skillshare Premium at skillshare.com/spirits2. Spirits was created by Amanda McLaughlin, Julia Shafini, and Eric Schneider, with music by Kevin MacLeod and visual design by Allison Wakeman.
Keep up with all things creepy and cool by following us at Spirits Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. We also have all of our episode transcripts, guest appearances, and merch on our website, as well as a form to send us your urban legends at spiritspodcast.com.
Join our member community on Patreon, patreon.com/spiritspodcast, for all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff. Just $1 gets you access to audio extras with so much more available too. Recipe cards, director's commentaries, exclusive merch, and real physical gifts.
We are a founding member of Multitude, a collective of independent audio professionals. If you like Spirits, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
And above all else, if you liked what you heard today, please share us with your friends. That is the very best way to help us keep on growing.
Thank you so much for listening. Till next time.